record, play. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first solo session of our Aurorum Kingmaker campaign. I'm really excited about to start this campaign. I'm really excited to see exactly where this game goes, what kind of kingdom they build, or even if they last long enough to even lay the first brick in the foundation of the kingdom that they will theoretically one day build. But to start this off, to kick it off, we have our good old friend here, Neal. Naghyt, how you doing?
I am good, thank you. I was tempted, I should have started that and been like, hello, Scott! And just derailed it.
Derailed? You mean like you're trying to do right now? We will not be derailed. The show must go on. So anyways, I'm really excited to start this game. Neal and I, we originally were going to build this campaign because Neal and I had a conversation about this many months ago, about how we wanted to actually do a Kingmaker campaign. It was probably why I was bullying him during 2 Crowns or something like that. But
I think it was before that.
Probably even before that, yeah. So we were really excited about working on this, and finally got together a crew, we got together a time and everything, a world, everything to make this happen. So I'm excited to do the first solo session for this. And Neely boy, you ready to jump into this?
I am. Heads up, everyone watching, I have never played Pathfinder before, so this is a learning curve for me.
Yeah, we're starting at level 1. Which makes things a little bit easier, but it's going to be a learning curve for pretty much all the PCs and whatnot that are playing along. But we'll figure it out as we go. It's going to be a lot of fun. So,
no level 0 start there.
Yeah. First and foremost, while there will be a couple of videos posting over on YouTube so that you can get a little bit of backstory, and there's all sorts of material being posted up on Patreon. If you actually are a patron right now, or if you are a future patron, you'll have those PDFs and whatnot being sent over to you, so you can get even more information about Aurorum, but you'll also learn more about the world as we're playing, as it kind of unfolds before you. So the name of the world that we're going to be playing in is Aurorum. Specifically, the continent that we're going to be playing on is Eroth, and the country, quote unquote, which you'll understand in a moment, we're going to be playing in is a country by the name of Adir. So where our campaign kicks up for us is actually going to be in the very late spring, early bits of summer. That time of year where in the morning, as the sun comes up, as you're starting to wake up, you can still see your breath and have a bit of a frost on you. It's a chill where you kind of like, as you're doing your morning pee, you can really just kind of have it shiver down your spine, hold your arms to your side. You know, not terribly comfortable. You really hope somebody has a percolator going to make that morning coffee or tea for you to get you through that bit of chill before the sun really starts beating down. Midday gets incredibly warm, sometimes uncomfortably so if you're traveling on the road for extended periods of time, and then it rests easy again at nights when you're lighting your campfire. It's a beautiful time of day to be out in the open air. It's a beautiful time of day to be enjoying travel. And that's probably a good thing because we have our campaign opening up with Rayrin in the middle of doing just that, traveling through what could be considered the free lands of Adir. Now, Adir aren't exactly free lands. You see, Adir is a country that, for one reason or another, for the past several centuries, has not had any legitimate kingdom ever exist and last in it for any amount of time worth noting. There are lots of theories and rumors and whatnot as to why that is, but we're not going to speculate as of right now because we have more important things on our hands. You see, Rayrin here made an unfortunate accident. He made a couple of decisions that led to being forced into making a couple of other decisions that led him forced into, well, chains. You see, in the world of Aurorum, many countries still believe in slavery. Many countries still practice it fully. No country more so than Perindel. Perindel, home of the Perrin. That is Aurorum's name for what is half-elves, a true race in this world. Not the mixture of humans and elves, but instead the mixture of Perrin and Perrin make Perrin children. So in Perindel, they have lots of culture that revolves around slavery, including a path to becoming a citizen. in the future. But we don't need to talk about that now. Rayrin has found himself in shackles on the border of the country that he belongs to, border of the country just a little bit to the west, by the name of Malta, and he's being transported through to Parendel. Now, to a different area of Parendel that deals with actual like slave processing, job application, so on and so forth. Now, these particular slave riders, they're kind of an unusual sort. Usually the people that are tasked with transporting slaves, capturing and transporting slaves from one region to another, are on the front lines of an ongoing war, collecting the people of the regions that they overtake because of an ancient practice they have that translates to the choice. More about that another time. The thing is, like, you weren't captured by a typical slave driving crew. You see, that's usually, they have caravans, they have wagons with shackles and bars on them and stuff like that. They'll transport people dozens at a time. They have tons of slave riders, so on and so forth. The group of slave drivers that you came across was actually 3. The leader amongst them, by the name of Reza, a woman that travels with them, incredibly fierce. She's more likely to spit literally in your face than she is to have a conversation with you. Her name is Jill Kane. She goes by Jill to the slave leader. She hates that. And there was another one by the name of Halder. You didn't know his name because you got to know him. You knew his name because when they attacked you guys, caught you off guard while you were a little, distracted, and they captured you. He actually suffered some pretty serious injuries in the skirmish that took place. His friend just bandaged him up, left him some supplies, and wished him a good luck as they brought their coin purse of humans out of Malta and into Parendel. Traveling with you is a few other slaves, people that you knew from your guard duty beforehand. We can get to that a little bit later. But a man by the name of Harveen, a woman by the name of Jaden, and another man by the name of Aldrin. So the 4 of you being the slaves under the care of Reza and Jill. So you guys are traveling out of from the borders of Malta and Parendel into another area of Parendel, but took this very peculiar turn where you traveled through Adir instead. Now, it could have been a shortcut if you went to certain areas of Parendel, but you are specifically going through a very mountainous and kind of like hillocky region. You've already left the mountains, thank God, but it's still in a hillocky region of Adir. And it strikes your character as odd, having a bit of an understanding of the region, of geography in general, why they would choose a harder road where slavery is illegal, or I should say, isn't legal. It's not that it's illegal, it's that there is no laws supporting slavery in Adir. It's more of like a free area. So I suppose let's start off this campaign, before we even talk about what your character looks like, or anything about him, with could you roll for me either a knowledge local or a knowledge nobility check?
So I want total. My highest total. I think I'll go with that.
Oh, and we're starting with a natty 20. Are you kidding me?
Nice.
You really do. The fact that you started with natty 20 means the other PCs are going to just do horribly in their solo sessions. Oh God, I hope Ollie and Arvine see this because, oh man, this will just boil their goose. All right.
That's Arvine's luck right there.
Yep, exactly. All right, so he must have had a good Monday. So, oh, that's rough. So let's continue. You're thinking about this, pondering it as you're traveling along, and you come to the realization, as I said, that it is very unusual for them to. This is technically a slightly shorter, by the way the crow flies, routes to where it is that you're going. However, it's a way more mountainous region, and again, into a region where slavery isn't legal of the strictest sense. So the only thing that you can think of is whatever these slave drivers are doing, whatever these slave traders are doing, they're probably trying to avoid, specifically because they stepped around the outskirts of, and for where you believe it is that they're bringing you, will stay completely outside of the one particular region or province of Perindel that happens to belong to nobles of that area. Honestly, which noble it is, you know, because you got a natty 20 on it. So that noble actually is by the name of Haven. So it's actually a parent noble by the name of Haven. You know that his family line goes back a fairly long while. He was part of the people that actually the region that he controls was once a part of the country of Yovance. Yovance has nearly lost the war to Perindel at this point, and so the entire region that he controls is a region that he took from the lands of Yovance. So he actually is, Haven is his first name, his surname is actually Yovance. Prior to being the noble that took that region, he was actually a parent with the last name of Medahina, which means that he actually had no family prior to taking this area. So let's continue on.
Which area was he in charge of? Sorry, just to be sure.
Oh, the name of the province? So the name of the province he actually controls is going to be Jovincia. And his goal is, of course, as you imagine, to take over all of Yovance. And a lot of the Perrin regions, not all of them, but a lot of the Perrin regions are named after the countries that they took. And this is kind of like a way that the Perrin dominate areas, is that they try to keep things very similar, at least at first, to how the culture was prior to taking the region, because it allows for the transition of being Yovance to Jovincia a little bit smoother, and it keeps the unrest kind of quelled down a bit. Okay? So, as I said, it's one of those mornings where your character wakes up and it's a bit chilly. We're talking, it's about 32 degrees US, 0 degrees pretty much the rest of the planet when you first wake up. So your character, who's, let's be serious, your blankets that you're snuggled up with and whatnot at night are not particularly thick. Your character does wake up and has to make a bit of a wee, and kind of steps off to the side to do so. While it is that you're relieving yourself this morning, watching the sun, it's already crested over the horizon, but really starting to gain light. You're looking at the sheer beauty of this region. I mean, again, you're in a stepped out of the mountainous area and into more of the hillocky area, and you happen to be pissing to the east, which is nice because you're seeing that sunrise come. But you also start to see the lands really flatten out before you. You can see the trees of a small forest not far off. You can see open plains ahead of you. You can see what is seemingly an unadulterated land. It really does kind of like strike you with the beauty of just like the open natural world. But more important than that, something kind of catches your eye off to the side. You know, kind of like finishing off 2 or 3 shakes and making your way a little bit off to the side to investigate further. You see that there's a curious stone. There was a thing that caught your eye beforehand. It was a bit of a glint beforehand, but when you get up closer, you see it's a stone. Bending down and picking it up and looking at it a little bit further, you see that while this is a stone, it happens to have a little bit of metallic filigree worked into it. If you had to guess, this probably was a part of some sort of statue or building or something of quality craftsmanship a long while ago. You don't think you could put your hand on what significance this is. Unfortunately, the DC is high because you don't have much to work with, but for funsies, why don't you roll me a knowledge history check? Oh, Jesus, Neal. God damn it, why did I doubt you? Why did I doubt you? You're looking at it, and honestly, what this immediately starts to remind you of, you play with it in your hands for a couple of minutes until you start to hear like the restlessness of Jill Kane behind. Clearly, you've been off taking your piss for a bit too long, and she's starting to come into this area. You ignore her at first. as you're looking this over, fiddling it through your hands, because it reminds you of your teachings that you had, being, your heritage, your birth, afforded you a little bit more education than many other people got, and a lot more opportunity than many other people get. Maybe not more so than almost all of Malta, but certainly more so than a typical commoner. The craftsmanship that you see here is none other than what you would imagine a hobgoblin. Hobgoblins from the nations of old would have created. As a matter of fact, you happen to be amongst one of the those that remember the word mull. The mull was the name that the hobgoblins were known as back when they had their own sovereign nation, when they were a race to be reckoned with. Anyways, it just gives you fond memories of who it was that had trained you, a dear old friend of yours that you haven't seen in probably too long, and those memories really kind of come forward as you think to yourself, oh, I really wish he was with me right now. That's exaggerated when she sneaks up behind you a little bit quieter and quicker than you had anticipated. You only realize how close she is when you hear that very swift whooshing sounds that ends with a very loud snap and a sharp pain on your left thigh. Roll for me a will save.
Where would I find a will there? Let's hope this is the right one.
There you go. Perfect. Oh my God! Jesus Christ, Neal! This is ridiculous! You can't write this. You can't write this. Oh my God! Christ! So, oh my God, this is ridiculous. So, the whip cracks, and yes, there's a very, very sharp stinging pain that explodes from where it is, just above your knee on your left leg, as where this thing hits. You're not wearing any form of armor. You're just wearing your typical, it's quality cloth, but cottons, but you're wearing your clothing. It splits the clothes, snaps you in the leg, immediately starts to draw blood, welts entirely in the area. The pain explodes down your foot, putting tingling in your toes, all the way up your ass, tingling in your ass, and you can feel it kind of like cricking in your back. However, just sheer willpower and the fact that these fond memories are not going to be interrupted by this bitch of a woman, you just ignore it. You don't give her the satisfaction of a wince, a shout, or anything. How do you react to her smashing the back of your knee with this whip?
I mean, obviously he stiffens up as it's good morning.
She looks to you and says, "You done?"
Yes, I think I probably am.
What's that?
Why don't you tell me?
She eyes you from her distance of just over about a dozen feet away or so. She eyes you curiously, cautiously. You can see her kind of like licking her teeth like she does behind her lips. She does this often whenever she tries to decide if she wants to give more punishment or if she's satisfied. She seems to be satisfied with the moment. She slowly curls up the whip while still standing there, staring at your what's in your hands, occasionally flashing forward at your face. Her eyes never putting down the guise of just rage, the fact that you've made her step a solid like 20 feet away from where she was before. And she ravels up the whip and rests it at her side. She then starts to meander her way over to where it is that you're standing, and then stands at full arm reach out and places her hand for you to stretches her arm for you to place it in her hand.
He'd hold it out as you would, like an apple. I imagine it's like a hefty apple size. Mm-hmm. He'd hold it out, and he'd wait for her to take it. He wouldn't place it in the hand.
There's like this solid second and a half lingering moment, silence between you. It feels almost as though the world around you can feel the tenseness of the moment, because you don't hear a bird, you don't hear a rustle. All that you feel is a breeze that comes through, and that new split in your pants, and well, at least the cold air feels good in that burning sensation of your leg. Eventually, she, with a sharp motion, snatches it out of your hands, much like a child would when they're being indignant, and snatches it out of your hand. She looks at it. Seconds pass. She turns it over. Then a few more times. And then she looks at you, just pure perplexity on her face. It's a rock.
Yes, I found it on the floor.
What are you doing with a rock? You gonna throw it? And she immediately, her hand goes to her cudgel she has at one side.
I thought I heard some animal in the underbrush, and I didn't wish for my gentleman's parts to be separated from my body.
It would lower your value. She tosses the rock at your feet, like one of those things where she tosses it, would have hit your foot if her aim was a little bit better. But it just barely bounces nearby. And she says, that way.
Varian would pick the rock up.
You just bend down to pick the rock up again.
Yeah.
So when she gestured towards the camp again and said that way, she almost immediately started turning as she said it, expecting you to just instantly listen. But when you don't,
he would follow. Like, it's like as you move
in
the direction,
you
you stoop down and pick it up.
So she sees that she'll stop. Like, she was turning away, she stops and she looks back at you, and you pick the rock back up again. She lets you pass by her, heading back towards the camp, we'll say, that you guys are in, and she eyes you curiously, and then she continues to stare after you into the rock as you're walking, and she you can see once again, like, the gears are very slowly and rustily turning in her head as to whether or not she wants to act. Her hand moves over to the handle of her whip. Do me a favor. Obviously, you're trying not to piss her off in any way. Why don't you roll for me a deception check or a bluff check to kind of like ease her concerns.
Bluff it is.
And so Neal's luck ends. And so as she sees that you're walking with this rock and, you're not trying to be overly curious about it, you're just playing with rock sort of a thing. She does see that you have probably more interest than she likes in that rock. You hear the whip swish out off of her belt as she prepares to come attacking at you with it again. Do you defend yourself, or do you stand, or do you just take the whip?
To be perfectly clear, I just believe this to be a rock.
You do believe this to be nothing more than a rock with clearly it was part of some construction of the mole a long time ago.
I think as Raren hears the whip, like, obviously she takes it off the hook and you hear it hit the ground as it extends. He knows what's about to happen next. I think he would pass the rock to her.
It's kind of like toss it in her direction.
So hopefully she reflexively grabs it, and while she's doing that, he trots back to camp. Not like I'm running away rate, but like she's less likely to whip me in front of her friend.
So you toss it to her, and she clumsily at first. She's actually not without coordination. She just didn't expect your reaction. So she clumsily catches it in the air, and that pulls her attention enough that you're able to turn your shoulders and then start walking back just out of the range of her whip. So she would have to chase after you to hit you with it. And so by the time she looks back up to see you again, you can hear her muttering to herself. This is by no means under her breath, but the distance gives it that illusion. And she wraps the whip back up and puts it at her side. Once you go back over to the area where you were sleeping, clearly she had removed your binds so that you would be able to go and piss without there being a concern. She comes back over and with a bit more vigor reties the knots around both your hands. And so the way that you're tied up is you have about a foot length of rope, so 12 inches, about a foot length of rope, about this wide, between your hands. In the center-ish of there's a knot that's tied down to your feet, which have a solid length, so your feet could easily get their full width, so you could run or whatever if you want to. The problem is, even with walking, that rope often catches on things, a jagged rock or a divot or something like that, so running has the concern of, you know what I mean? But you could get full stride, assuming open ground, right? And then the amount of rope that goes between the two is enough that your hands can sit this high up from there. With it being slightly taut, you couldn't even reach above your head if you wanted to. So she ties you back up to that and puts you in the area. When you come over and you sit down, you can see that Harveen, Aldrin, and Jaden have all awoken, and they're all looking at you. And Aldrin, who's unfortunately the buddy of yours that really instigated the decision that you made. He was kind of like your go-to for getting in mischief friend. Harveen was almost a nervous Nelly that you guys all convinced, and was like, it's hated you guys ever since then. And Jaden, who just kind of like always just accepts where she is. It's kind of like, yep, this is life now. And just kind of things almost never seem to bother her, no matter what. It's like she gets cracked by a whip, strike of pain across her face, then she just accepts it, you know? So Aldrin looks to you and says, already up to some?
He'd lean in and lower his voice. Just found a territorial animal worrying about a rock.
He chuckles a bit. Harveen's like, she's got to take our teeth if you keep doing that. You know that they take your teeth, right? And Jaden's like, oh, would you stop with that already? They're not bono-nancers or whatever you call them. Osteomancy. I've told you this before. They take your teeth and they use the magic of the bones. There is no magic in our bones. There is in his bones. And he says, looking to you, being amongst the four of you, the only one that's properly trained in magery. The others just being skilled with their weapons of choice, which unfortunately none of you seem to have. So they have that little conversation amongst themselves, and Jill goes across the way, and you can see that she is doing the task that, what's his name there? Reza calls, her work. Literally just refers to it as her work. Preparing the meal in the morning, so on and so forth, for all of you guys, which is slop. They're going about their business. Neal, you now have full autonomy and freedom. Before we go any further, can you do me a favor? Describe what Rayrin looks like.
Okay. Rayrin is a young human. He's in his 20s. He's tall. He's about 6 foot, give or take. We've not got any measurements here. This is, medieval Sith. We're in the middle of nowhere. He's quite heavily set. He looks like he's well muscled. He's got quite striking black hair. It's not the darkest hair, but it does conflict with the fact that he's got quite pale skin. And he has a nice pair of blue eyes to go alongside that. He's just wearing standard hose and what some people might call, it's not quite like an arming jacket because it's not designed to have armor put on, but there is padding in places. And it's clearly not designed for combat. It's an undergarment of some sort.
Gotcha. Clearly, whatever you were wearing prior, your equipment that you had prior was stripped from you. And unfortunately, a lot of what was stripped from you was actually left at the area where you guys were collected because, unfortunately, a beaten and battered short sword or the like just does not have much value. So why weigh ourselves down with things that you guys might be able to grab and use yourselves? So a lot of that stuff was just kind of left in the area where they had left Halder before. So you, Rayrin, you kind of like know that it's going to be another day of travel. On the light side, things are going to be a little bit easier because there is open plains ahead of you. So the good news is they're going to be tripping over less rocks. But how are you kind of feeling this morning?
We've been on a forced march for how many days with probably reduced food.
Because of not only is it reduced rations compared to what you're used to, and it's not like you had hearty meals before, but also the trek has been very difficult with you being bound up the way that you are for about 3.5 weeks now.
I should imagine, like, he's
and
not.
It was
got
much
any,
colder, mind you. Sorry, it was much colder back then. So luckily things are at least getting warmer in the day, but it's not been comfortable.
I mean, I would suggest that all these guys are looking thinner than when they first started the journey. They probably, I know Rarin probably would have, because he's not got, like, other than that jacket, he's not got any, like, wrist protection, so he'd probably have rope burn on his wrists. You could probably see, like, redness, probably some scabs there from where it's just been rubbing each time it ends up pulling, like, as much as you try to not. Oh, I stumble and pull. That sort of thing. He's probably looking paler than usual. You know, hair's bedraggled. I didn't actually comment on what his hair's like. It's black. It's about just over shoulder height, just past shoulder length, but it's tied back neatly in sort of a low ponytail. As neat as you might expect for someone who has not bothered with it for the past few weeks. And it looks greasy, and he looks bedraggled. His clothes, his shoes, and whatnot are mud stained by this point. I just imagine, given like the harsh terrain, he's probably wearing leather shoes of some form, but I doubt they were leather boots. So he may even have like holes in his shoes at this point. You know, he wasn't expecting to go on a forced march for this long. All in all, he looks tired, beginning of unwell.
Awesome. So, as you guys are kind of going about your little conversations that you're having with one another, Harveen being the downtrodden one, Jaden just kind of occasionally quipping into conversation, and mostly you and Aldrin just trying to make the best of the situation, trying to keep your hopes high. Reza does the same thing that he's done every fourth day since you've started. Like I said, it's about 3.5 weeks. So you're looking at about 24 days. This is the 6th time he does it. You see that he has taken from his supplies. He's a small pouch that in it he's pulled out these kind of large-looking coins. They're these large-looking coins that, at a certain light, they looked like they were gold at first, but you know gold. You're familiar with it. You grew up with gold. By no means a poor man. The way that the light bounces off of it doesn't quite come off as gold. Maybe more of a brass kind of color. Either way, could you actually do me a favor? Could you roll me a spellcraft check? My apologies, a knowledge arcana check to see if you're familiar with what this is. So you actually are familiar with these because Amalta happens to be a region that has more magic in it than most of the other regions. This world overall is kind of a lower magic world. There are 2 countries where magic is much, much, much more prevalent. You happen to be of the lesser of those 2 countries. The other regions, sure, there are people that cast spells, but overall, magic is not very affluent. As a matter of fact, the idea of somebody having what we in meta terms would refer to as 7th level spells is almost unheard of in this world. Typically, people don't even have magics over what would be like 2nd level spells for like something that an average person would have ever experienced, right? So anyways, but magic is of course in the world. So you've actually seen these before. These are tokens. They're named after some ancient wizard who invented the design. It doesn't really matter. But these are tokens. And this particular token, every time you see it, always has the imagery of a type of sparrow that's on it. And they always walk off to the side. And you can see he always kind of like steps out of view. So you can't see him, you can't hear what he's doing or anything like that. But right before he steps back into view from the area where he is, all of a sudden you see a sparrow, completely normal looking, completely normal in size, but with ridiculous speed and almost a determined path, flies up into the area and starts beelining it, usually in the direction of where it is that you're traveling to, even if off by a few different degrees, in the direction of where it is that you're traveling to. So whenever he does this task, he usually disappears for about 15 to 20 minutes or so before he returns. So you see that he kind of, finishes eating his own slop that morning, his slop being a much larger portion and with a bit more seasoning than the one that you get. Definitely more chunks of meat in it. Before he just kind of like, ugh! All right, watch the fuckers. And he goes off, pulling out of his pack this little purse of who knows how many of them he has in there, takes a thing, looks it over, throws the thing back into his pack, and steps around around the corner, a bit out of the way. If you had to guess, he goes off by a few hundred feet at least. He definitely gets out of sight and out of sound for even the keenest of listeners to be able to gather. And that leaves... So he's been gone for maybe at this point in time 3 minutes or so as he completely steps out of view. As it leaves the four of you there with Jill. Jill, of course, is watching you closely.
Aldrin, Harvey, and Jaden.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of builds are we talking here? Obviously, they're martial warriors. Are they actually warriors, fighters, or are they like, I'm a militiaman?
So in the world of Pathfinder, you will learn very quickly, and as our patrons will learn as they're...
I don't need to know class. I mean, like, build-wise. I've fought with them.
No. I'm just drawing. There's PC classes, there's NPC classes. So there's a fighter, and then there's a warrior, which is the NPC version. So it's like a weaker version of a fighter. So they all clearly have at least one level in warrior. You know what I mean? However, Harveen, you think is better with words than he is with swords. Probably shouldn't have either a sword or a pen in his hand. Jaden and Aldred, Aldred are both good in combat, very capable. She is a bit of a strong build, actually maybe as strong, if not stronger than you.
Probably.
Yeah. And he is a bit more of a lithe person. Always seems to just find himself in the right place at the right time when you guys need him to be. They're, of course, a bit, weak now, like yourself, but...
So, no more mountains.
Keen, says Harvey.
No more mountains means no more harsh land.
Aldred immediately gets that look in his eye, that smile starting to crawl across his face. You can instantly feel the fire in your heart building, because whenever he gives you that look, the two of you have a story. Unfortunately, the other two know that look as well. Jaden nods, understanding, accepting it, and Harveen eyes widen with fear. As a matter of fact, roll me a sense motive. Widen with fear. As a matter of fact, it's so exaggerated of an expression, you're almost afraid. Yeah, exactly. What do you do?
Whatever happens here, if you don't side with us, you'll die either way, Harvey. You think Jill's not going to fly into a rage if we try to run? This is your only chance. It's just logic.
I won't lie. That sounds more like an intimidate than it does a diplomacy. But you have a relationship with the person. So I will allow your discretion on this one.
Obviously, I would choose diplomacy.
Oh, you're not as good at intimidate?
No.
Oh, I don't remember your whole character sheet. I'm sorry.
I would 100% choose diplomacy.
Okay. Oh, that's a pretty good modifier. A plus 7. So you look to him. You say that, and if you didn't think that was enough to convince him, fortunately for you, Jaden says, "Yeah," accepting it as is, and Aldred says, "Come on, grow a pair. Wait, do you really want to embarrass yourself in front of both the ladies?" And so you can see that Harveen's like more upset by that, but kind of like is begrudging. He goes, "Fine, let's just entertain your stupid plan for a second. What are we gonna do? We're all bound. We're still on a hill, and there's still 2 of them with lots of weapons, and none of us. She's got a crossbow, and you saw what happened to Steel."
Yeah. Well, it won't be like Steel because we know they're coming this time. In fact, they don't know we're coming, so it will be like Steel, but the other way around. So the plan is Razor will be gone for at least 5 more minutes, and during this time, you know what I said about the bear and the rock? I will distract Jill. Jaden, you are wearing a garrote. I need you to creep up and silence her. Aldrin, I want you to support Jaden with this. Take out the legs instantly, as soon as possible. Harveen, your job is to be quiet.
Literally, Aldrin just bursts out laughing. It was one of those things where his laughter is so loud, it immediately gets Jill kind of like, she was a little distracted. Obviously, she was watching you guys, but it's like every second, right? She actually, her eyes snap over into your direction. What? What's so funny over there?
He'd whisper, "Here we go." And then he'd stand up. "You don't know what that rock was, do you?"
She looks, once again, like a kind of perplexed look goes on across her face. She's trying to remember what rock you're referring to. And then you can see the strike of awareness come across her face. She's like, "Yeah?"
The gold filigree. Didn't you see it?
Go. No.
That, my dear, is worth an awful lot more than all 3 of us put together.
I'll have your tongue.
Very well. Fine. Ignore the 500 gold lying on the floor in an apple-shaped prize.
Oh, I get it. You think that because you found some gold, and you think you know where more gold is, then you're going to use that to barter with me? I'll have you know. And she goes over and she's actually starts unfastening her whip and comes at you with the whip out.
Whoa. Have you heard of the Mal?
She stops for a second, thinking, Mal.
They're hobgoblins. That's their ancient name. That is a Mal sovereign orb. Anyone who has that has access to a Mal sovereign's hoard. You simply have to find the hold, and you put it into the hole in the door, and it opens. As he's talking this, he's slowly walking to get her to turn away from the others, and he's gesticulating. He's wanting to draw her attention, but let's hope she doesn't cotton that one.
So what I need from you is 2 things. One, first of all, let me describe something. Sorry. One, she is clearly like following what you're saying, but like 2 sentences behind you're saying it. So it's kind of like building up a degree of confusion, which luckily for you, she's so dumb, is kind of like adding to what it is that you're trying to pull off here. But 2, I actually need you to roll for me a perform check, or a bluff, but a perform check is actually what you're doing here.
Let's do a perform check. Okay. Let's hope I roll well.
Okay, so you put on a bit of a performance, and she can clearly tell you're putting on a big of a performance. So she follows along for a while. Do you have the rock in your hands? No, you tossed it to her, and you were kind of like making your way back over to where it was that she would have just dropped it on the ground. So as you get close to where it was that you dropped it on the ground, she's kind of like following along after you. She says, "That's enough," and cracks at you with the whip. Okay, do you take the hit, or do you try to defend yourself as you normally would?
So my understanding is that whips wrap around whatever you hold up.
Not if you do it correctly. Oh, you mean if you try to catch it? That's rather difficult to do. Yeah, that's a typical difficult. And just so you know, whips, just so you know, in Pathfinder, they actually do non-lethal damage. As opposed to lethal damage, non-lethal damage heals at the rate of 1 health point per character level per hour. So they actually heal pretty quickly. But
Yeah. I mean, this is do or die. So, yeah, I will attempt to grab the whip as it comes in.
So what I'm going to need from you to attempt to grab a whip, first thing you need to roll is an initiative. And the reason why I need that is just to see if you can more or less prepare your action to do so, or if she cracks it too quickly.
Sure.
Okay. And I'm going to roll. I'll just slash roll 1d20 plus, because I don't have a we don't have tokens set up for this sort of a thing. I rolled a 7, so you actually do kind of get to act first, and so you like prepare your action to do this. Now again, catching a whip is a very, very difficult thing to do. I'm actually going to change what I'd said a moment beforehand, because just like trying to like sunder a weapon or anything like that in Pathfinder, it's a CMB check is technically what it is.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be a high DC, because it's not just flat against your CMD. It's going to be a very high DC. But why don't you roll for me your CMB as she cracks it at you.
Oh.
Unfortunately, it does not play out in your favor. So give me 1 second to do my actual attack. Oh, that won't work because I don't have a it's annoying. That's fine. So where is her actual stats? I have them over here. Her chance to hit is a plus. Okay. So she easily beats an AC of 14, which is more than what your AC is. And they don't get to add anything to that, do they? Yeah. So that's actually 1.
So I presume the way non-lethal works is it stacks up to your match HP. When it hits max HP, you fall unconscious.
Exactly that, yep. So it's actually, I rolled maximum damage, 1d3 plus 1. So they do d3 damage, whips do. So 1d3 plus 1 is max damage. I actually hit you for max 4 points of damage. What it is you just happen to put your hand up at that natty one. You try to catch it, and I'll apply the natty one in a second. So what it is she actually catches you with the whip in such a way it splits open your hands. I imagine you probably would have tried to catch it with your dominant hand, being right-handed.
I hadn't considered it. Sure, why not?
Well, I'm a southpaw, so my character's almost always southpaw.
Yeah, same. Let's make him a lefty.
All
There's
right,
not
so-
enough in the world.
Yeah, exactly. You just gotta fluff the numbers, you know. So you try to catch this whip with your left hand. It splits open your hand, sending pain all the. This time your face reacts. You can't not react. You give her that satisfaction, which almost spurs her on, which is a very unfortunate thing. Because of that natty 1 on your attempt, you actually are going to take a, because of the pain in your hand and everything, a -1 to all d20 rolls that require using of that hand, which is very unfortunate.
Oh, damn.
But she does split open your hand when she does that. Oof. I'm just like, ugh. One time my brother hit me like after a shower. Like, he got out of the shower and I was walking around and I didn't have a shirt on, I just had pants on. He took his towel and he whipped me in the back and it literally split open my back. I still have a mark for it. And I just poured blood. Like, oh, it hurts. I can only imagine on your hand. Oh.
Fantastic. Great.
So, what do you,
Well, at this point, it's do or get the shit whipped out of you.
So you were going towards the rock, trying to
I didn't like that, but that is what I would do. I didn't mean to click that then.
Perfect. So what you try to do is you try to fortitude. So once again, it's one of those things where usually you don't have to roll a concentration check to cast a spell unless it was the same round you took damage. But because of that searing pain of the whip on your hand, and that does have a somatic component, correct?
No.
Oh no.
Just verbal.
Oh, lucky for you. See, she didn't know that you happen to be somebody who's skilled in magics. You guys were able to hide that amongst yourselves. When you guys got attacked beforehand, and a couple of your friends died, You were a little bit intoxicated at the moment, so you weren't appropriately able to utilize your... You tried to cast a spell, you just flubbed up the words and it didn't work, so... That didn't give way. And when you realized that you were going to lose, you luckily were keen enough to quickly hide your spell book onto the person of the actual mage that was with you, so they didn't put two and two together. That being said, they weren't aware of the fact that you were able to cast spells, and cantrips never leave your mind until you choose to write them off. You throw your flare at her. Flare is, of course, based off of a will save. As you know, she doesn't really have much of that.
As I know, shifty eyes. Yep, so it's like a little yellow laser pointer dot, 3D, appears like about 5 centimeters in front of her face, and then it just goes...
Yeah, nice. It's like a little burst of light. Nice. So, and that actually gives her the, so she's dazzled for 1 minute. And just to describe what the dazzled condition does, I think it might say it on your character sheet, but I'm just going to look it up really quickly. I believe it's just -1 to attack rolls and stuff like that. Jump to dazzled. So dazzled is -1 penalty to attack rolls and sight-based perception checks, which is wonderful because she's about to make a perception check for a reason that we've already discussed. So these people have their modifiers. She's going to be the first one, and they're going to get their bonuses. So your friends try to sneak up on her as this burst happens, as she whips you with that. They're both coming up behind her and everything. Now, unfortunately, Jaden is, while she's stronger, is not the most stealthy amongst the group. So while it is the burst happens, she all of a sudden kind of like loses sight of you for a second. She happens to like flinch away and hears something, just something. She flinches away and just barely sees the blurriness of Jaden, who had like kicked a rock. Also somewhat surprised with a burst of a flare itself. Kicked a rock. She looks just in time to see Jaden coming, and Jaden reaches around, tries to get the bit of rope that, like you said, you're wearing a grout, around her neck, and flinches out of the way just in time to not see that happen. However, she didn't see coming from the other direction Aldred, who was way more stealthy, who literally comes in and just like football tackles her by the legs. So I had already done his roll as well. He successfully grappled, bulrushed her, I should say, with the CMD. Grabs her by the CMB. Grabs her by the legs. Just kind of like does one of those. Grabs her, lifts her up slightly, and throws both of them down to the ground. So as she hits the ground, there's this really heavy thud as like her shoulders and back hit the ground. Luckily, her head does not smack against any rocks. Luckily for her, Jaden is kind of cursing to herself like shit. And then immediately tries to react and kind of jump in. Harveen's like, you screwed up, guys, you screwed up. And then just starts getting louder, which is unfortunate for all reasons, as you might imagine. And that's going to kind of bring us back around to you had done that. They reacted. It technically is back to her turn again, which she had rolled way lesser than you on initiative. So she's going to, where was she on initiative? A 7. She's now going to be able to start reacting. She immediately starts to try to kick what's his name's in the face to get him off of her while drawing a dagger out from her side, knowing that in these kind of close quarters, the best weapon is a little one where you can just... So she immediately starts to try to kick him in the face and drawing out her dagger, getting ready to fight for her life with it. Or fight for your life with it. Won't lie, it was a lucky hit. It was a very lucky hit with her her heel into your poor friend's face. I rolled a natural 20 on my attack roll, and I confirmed the crit because you guys don't really have any AC with her boot. Natural damage for a medium-sized person is the same as a whip. It's 1d3, so it's going to be the multiplied version. It's going to be... what's the easiest way to do this? Sorry. It's going to be 2d3 plus...
No. Plus 4, my god.
Well, times 2, right? So she explodes her foot into Aldred's face, right? Who had her pinned to the ground. Unfortunately, Aldred, while he's quick and he's tough and so on and so forth, That was more than he in his currently frail state was able to sustain. She probably shattered his the bridge of his nose. But he just goes limp. And she quickly pulls her feet out from in his now very weak grasp and starts climbing herself back to her feet. Something like this usually would provoke an attack of opportunity from somebody nearby if they were trained in doing combat without with a weapon in hands. Mm-hmm. You guys unfortunately don't have any weapons in hand. That brings us back. She starts to square off with Jaden in front of her. Her dagger in one hand, and her hands slowly reaching towards the cudgel across the other side of her belt. It brings us back to the top with you, sir. So as a reminder, you're standing about 15 feet away from her. Rocky terrain between the two of you guys. So it's a small trek to be able to get to her. 15 feet away from her, where she is, because she cracked you with the whip. On the opposite of her is Jaden, standing there squaring off, starting to look nervous, but accepting the situation. He's unconscious on the ground. You can see blood starting to pool on the ground near him, and Harveen is kind of like standing up and backing away and starting to freak the fuck out, man.
Mm-hmm. Correct me if I'm wrong, but she's got a dagger in one hand. She's reaching for a cudgel with the other.
Yep.
Which means the whip is on the floor.
She unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, dropped the whip as she was climbing herself up off the ground.
I can then pick up the whip. What sort of action would that be?
So you'd have to move up to where she is. So that's no problem. Picking it up is just you can interact with one object, no problem. So you pick up the whip. However, doing so provokes attack of opportunity because you're picking up an item off the ground in a threatened area. It's one of the reasons why disarm in Pathfinder is actually very useful, because in 5e, you disarm somebody, they just pick it up.
I guess I gotta do it.
So like rush forward. You could also choose to, similar to how Aldred did beforehand, however that ended, try to bull rush her to CMB, tackle her to the ground.
Yeah, my CMB is not very good.
Yeah.
I think I'll try and pick up that whip.
So you rush forward. You try to pick up the whip, which of course she kind of like hears you, she kind of like hears you coming, but she looks down and sees you. Luckily, she still has that kind of like float in bubbles in her eyes at the moment, so she's still can't really see very well because it lasts for a minute, right? And she's going to attack you, mate. So her modifier is usually this, but instead, what's your AC? Is an 11, 12?
It's a 13.
Oh, it's a 13. Jesus, wow. I just barely hit you when I hit you before. That's funny. Either way, so she actually does succeed in her attack with the dagger. So it's actually because I rolled the total of a 20, and so she's going to be able to harm you. It's going to be. Just 3 points of damage. So as you reach down to grab the, that's lethal damage. So as you reach down to grab the whip, probably grabbing at it gingerly. Maybe it's the fact that you instinctively used your left hand to grab at it, and then you flinched when you grabbed the whip. That's probably what opened you up enough that she was able to just barely come down and just slam that dagger. You flinched away, so she didn't like get it all the way into your, but she pierced your flesh by like a fraction of an inch. And as you pulled your arm away, that caused the ripping that put the big gash in your arm. So you feel like, so you feel like a gash come across the arm here.
Right.
Now, a whip, the way that they work in Pathfinder, is they technically are a ranged weapon. Now, using a ranged weapon in melee usually provokes an attack of opportunity. That is also the case with a whip. Now, as I said before, so you'd have to step back at least 5 feet. Now, let's talk about speed and whatnot for a second. I forgot to make you make a check. You actually have to make me an acrobatics check to be able to get over there because of the rougher terrain with your things on your legs. No problems. So you actually, because you made your check, you did not move at half speed. You moved at normal speed to get up there. The rope didn't get in the way. 15 is actually the check to make it so you move at normal speed. 10 is the check to make it so you can move at half speed. 5 or less is when you fall on your face. So you're fine. You move up there, you grab the thing. You can move backwards. Now, leaving a threatened area also provokes an attack of opportunity. However, almost nobody can provoke 2 attacks of opportunity, and it has like you have to have special feats or abilities to have more than one. So do you choose to back up again?
Yeah.
Okay. Before you back up, I'm going to allow you to roll a sense motive. Okay. So you can see that she's obviously prepared for you to back up, but you get the impression she does not have the ability to get another attack of opportunity. All right.
Okay, cool. Right. So a whip, and now in Pathfinder, it's just every weapon is strength unless you have a specific finesse.
Every melee weapon is strength, ranged weapons are dexterity. A whip is a ranged weapon, even though it looks like a melee weapon. So it's dexterity. And I imagine you backed up 10 feet?
Yes.
Okay, so as you reach down, grab that whip, she just barely gets a dagger in there. You're jerking away is what caused the nasty gash. You almost like stumble backwards, just barely stopping yourself from falling on your ass, using your right hands to keep yourself. Luckily, you caught a rock the right way. Twisted your wrist on the other hand uncomfortably, but you're able to stumble, get your feet under you, and pop back up about 10 feet away. You have the whip in your hands. It fucking hurts in this hand, but that's your offhand. That's worse. So you take the -1 instead of the -2 penalty for attacking, and you.
Right. So first off, so I believe this is a free action.
Little thing before you. My apologies before you ask what you're going to do. The way whips work, they do not do any damage to somebody that has a natural armor of +3 or higher, or an armor bonus of 1 or higher. So like padded armor even will protect you against a whip.
Okay.
She clearly has like quality leathers on, so the whip, for the sake of harming her, is not very likely. However, disarming, grappling, all those other things you can do with a whip. Okay.
So I can, correct me if I'm wrong on this, I can use my arcane pull, which I probably ought to include the description in that. But I can use one of those. It would use 1 point, and it would expend 1 point from my arcane pull as a swift action to grant any weapon a +1 enhancement bonus.
Sexy. Does that affect magic weapons? Don't treat it unless otherwise. So I don't think magical whips go through armor bonuses. I can Google that real quick, unless you're still trying to do that other stuff.
There is other stuff that goes along with it.
Go ahead, please.
So he grasps the whip, and there's the briefest flash of like a light blue light that extends the length of the whip just for a moment. And then I can use spell combat, which I do want to include in my description on that one. So offhand weapon is a spell, so for a full round action, can I use a full round action?
Yep, because the swift does not affect that. Ooh. Unfortunately, not this round. A full round action is when you use your move and standard together. So you can do that next round.
That's fine.
Sorry.
In that case, I would want to disarm the dagger, I think.
So for this round, you want a CMB against the dagger.
Yep.
Cool. Now the way CMBs work, if you succeed, you disarm the dagger. If you fail, they then get to try to disarm you. Which, whatever, you know.
Yep. So would I have a temporary +1 on this because my weapon has a +1 enhancement bonus?
Absolutely. So you're going to be rolling with a flat check because of the the -1 +1.
Okay.
And so that's going to be your BAB of 0 and your dex of... Ooh! That's actually a really good check. It's actually a really good check, because CMD, the way that works, that's base level. So that's a 10, plus your strength, plus your dex, plus your BAB. Now, she happens to have a BAB of 1, a strength of 1, and a dex of 2. That's a 14. You beat it, boy. You actually grab at the dagger and whip it out of her hands. Now, when you pull the dagger from her hands, because you're doing it with a whip as opposed to just drop it on the ground in front of her, you can actually pull it away. Where do you want to try to like pull it back to, like in your vicinity? You can't bring it straight to you. You might stab yourself. But do you want to pull it to your vicinity? Or do you want to just like pull it out wide?
I pull it to my vicinity and say, I mean, we've already made loud noise at this point, and shout, Aldred!
Okay.
That boy needs a dagger.
All right. So this actually gets pulled. The way that you pulled in your vicinity, thank God it didn't freaking hit you. It actually, when you like pull it back, you flip the whip up. So it actually flips up and lands over, like it actually goes over your head, landing somewhat behind you. Give me one moment. This is going to be... Luckily for you, it actually lands in the square immediately behind you. So you're standing about 10 feet from her. It's there's like about 3 feet or so behind, 4 feet behind you on the ground. So Aldred, you call out Aldred's name. He doesn't seem to move, or he's fully unconscious at least at this moment. After you is, of course, Jaden's turn. Jaden, seeing that she doesn't currently have a weapon in hand, she hasn't finished drawing out the other one yet, takes the opportunity. She immediately rushes forward and throws like a kick at her stomach and tries to loop around and grab the garrote around her neck. So let's have her make her attack.
God, can you imagine what this woman would be like if she wasn't dazed?
Oh my god, I actually rolled really well. I rolled natural 19 plus some. So she successfully does, this was more or less like a boot, my CMB check. She successfully gives like the boot to the belly, which kind of like, she leans forward just enough that she's able to kind of like step around behind her, looping her arm. And as soon as she gets to the other side, she does the twist of the hands and the pull to the and immediately start the garrote. Unfortunately, because she only has one attack a round, she can't fully set in the garroting. She needs another round to do so, and the bad guy gets an opportunity to try to fight out of this. So, similar to what she did last time, she's going to try to counter. She finishes drawing her cudgel, which is far less effective in melee than a dagger would be, in grappling than a dagger would be. But she takes her cudgel, she starts trying to swing behind her at Jaden's face. And because she's dazed, she's stacking those penalties, boyo. And the stacking of penalties is exactly what you needed. I actually, because of my penalties, I couldn't crest double digits. My penalties pulled me down to only a 9 total. She's trying to swing behind her and smash Jaden, and she does. She hits Jaden. Actually hits Jaden right in the friggin' side of the head, clipping her ear, causing a little bit of blood to trickle out and whatnot. It stings and it sucks, but not enough of an impact to actually harm her or dissuade her in this combat. So Jaden just kind of like holds it in. We're going to loop back around to your turn. Roll me a perception. Holdren is still freaking out and doing nothing. Just kind of like watching. Harveen, sorry, is still freaking out and doing nothing. Holdren, is still freaking out and doing nothing. But off in the distance, you see, like, while still holding the feather token to his holding the token to his lips, kind of like you see this is again a few hundred feet away. You just barely capture this. Holding the thing to his lips, Reza pokes his head into where it is that you can see him and he can see you. Just happen to glance that way and catch that glint of light, which caught your attention, and like, all of a sudden, his eyes, you can't really even see the expression, but you imagine his eyes wide and he's panicking. He throws the coin and starts trying to head back your way. He's going to be there in a matter of less than a minute, because he's going to be hoofing it this way. So he's going to be here as quick as he can be. So, someone charging across the football field. Well, a rocky football field. It's your turn.
She has a crossbow, right?
Where is
it in relation?
Where she was sitting beforehand when this all started. So in relation to where you are, because you moved sideways and she approached, probably about 20 feet from where you are. You would have to make another check to get to it.
So could I use the whip to take a tripping action and then move and to pick up the crossbow?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so I'm fairly certain. Let me just double check with the arcane pool that it's still in effect. For 1 minute. Okay, cool. Yep.
Because she's actively grappling, you can have her for free aid you in this. You would just have to give her some sort of in-game heads up, like drop her or something like that. And then when you do it, I'll give you a +2 from her aiding you, because she'll just kick out her leg.
Yep. Yeah, he'd just say, "Go low," and then.
Okay. So you have your +3, +2 is 5. Okay.
So you're calculating all of that. I don't need to add any of that. Yeah.
Correct.
Cool.
So I'm just going to give you another plus 2 on top of that. I told you the DC was 14. You hit the DC. You actually take her out. You grab her by one of her ankles, and you start tugging. Unfortunately, it doesn't pull. It doesn't budge. She's a strong woman. Then all of a sudden, Jaden kicks out the knee of the opposite, which literally just kind of like makes her exaggerate the amount of weight she needs to put on this leg. And as she shifts that weight down, you just kind of like full on pull, and poof, she drops to the ground, hitting her coccyx hard on the way down, but also tightening that grout around her neck. Make your acrobatics check to cross the way.
Is conversation in combat a free
Yes.
action?
Yes, as long as it's not ridiculous.
Raren would point at Harveen and say, "Help Aldred," and then
Do me a favor, because you need to inspire that. Roll me an intimidation.
oof.
He's still panicky, unfortunately. Sorry.
Right, acrobatics.
You easily make your way over there, looping your way over to where it was that she had the crossbow, and you pick up the crossbow. At the same time, you see the crossbow. You also see there's her pack of its supplies sitting right there. His pack is only about another 5 feet from there, like a backpack of supplies. So her pack is right there with the crossbow and everything for you to just grab up if you wanted to. His pack is an additional 5 feet away. Do you pick up the crossbow or the pack?
I don't want to abandon my friends. Just take the pack and just leave. Where do I check my proficiency? I'm fairly certain I'm proficient with like just martial weapons.
As a magus, I believe all simple, and actually I think it wrote it on your character sheet unless there was somebody else I did that for. So Pathfinder, magus.
Oh,
That's a simple weapon. You should be proficient with a crossbow.
sweet. Also, I did note I actually have weapon finesse, and it does explicitly say I can use my dex with a whip. So apparently you can't.
Oh, you can't normally?
Unless you have it, but I have it. So
Whoopsies. My mistake. Oh, that's cool.
Right. So
It's one of those weird ones.
just a crossbow.
Light armor.
Light crossbow, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just saying, all simple and martial weapons. Bam. So light crossbow. Yep.
So he'd I mean, I presume this is not big enough to need a windlass. It'd just be an over the top conk. He'd conk, set the bolt, drop to one knee and turn, and obviously you can't do anything else.
Of course. And so that after you goes to Jaden's turn. Jaden's going to do her roll again. Jaden actually rolled well, but just barely not well enough. More or less, she continues choking, which has a constant an added effect, but like it doesn't exasperate.
Progress.
Yeah, exactly. It progresses technically on like a small ticker, but not like a big chunk, right? Baby step, not big step. So that ends there. That brings us to the baddie's turn, who's going to try to fight her way out. She has even more penalties now because of the scenario that you just kind of like put her in. It's just like a 1-round penalty. I rolled a natural 3 with minuses equals a 0. So
Nice.
because of the situation. So, but most of those penalties are going to go away at this point because there's a 1-round thing. And that brings us back to you again.
Raren's on one knee. He's got the crossbow cocked. He takes aim at Razor, and will just thunk
Okay, roll your...
into the bod. And this one is Dex, correct?
Correct, unless you spent another swift action to make this your new mage weapon. So you get an additional +1 chance to hit and damage. Because you have how many of those a day? You know?
4. Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
Where do I add a magic +1? Right there. Enhancement bonus, does that apply to damage as well? Or just...
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep, it's like a +1 weapon, yep.
Okay, cool. Right, okay, lovely. And let me roll that and hopefully not totally miss and update my arcane
Oh,
pool.
beautiful. That is definitely a hit. Not only is it a hit, did you apply the +1 for being magical?
Yes, that's a 5.
9 points of damage, boyo. Oh my god, that's sexy. So you let loose the crossbow bolt. Now, it's not that this person is the toughest person in the world, but certainly can take a hit better than most of you guys. You know, he's wearing good armor, he can roll with the punches, so on and so forth. But you actually sink through his armor and catch him in the shoulder with so much force, and he genuinely didn't expect it, that he was actually pulling something out with his other, you can't quite see what it was, but he was actually trying to get something out of like his side pouch that he had there, and you catch him in the shoulder so much that he kind of spins back and drops whatever it was that he was holding, caught off guard by that. He looks back your way and, I'll get you!
Shunk.
Start reloading. Okay. And then she's Jaden over there. Let's see if she can have more success. And she does. Whenever I roll, I always roll 4 d20s at once. Unfortunately, the second one was a natty 20, but she still succeeded. She still rolled very high. So she succeeded. She starts to choke out. What's her name?
Jill.
Jill. So Jill's actually at what you would call like 0 health points. She's staggered at the moment while still able to try to defend herself. Jill is now going to just stop what she was doing beforehand, which is swing with the cudgel. She actually draws a short sword and, almost like cutting at her own throat, tries to saw off the rope that's there, trying to save herself. Oh god, this is terrible.
That's desperate.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, you are obviously, like, who wants to get choked out?
And so Jill, she grabs the thing and starts sawing at it, and she succeeds. She cuts through every last piece of the fibers of the rope, and you can see the excitement in her eyes as it comes free, and the horror in what's her name, Jaden's eyes, as all of a sudden, because she's pulling up with so much force, she just stumbles backwards onto her ass, and then kind of flops backwards and bumps her head a little bit on the ground. Did not expect that much force to just come flying her way. And then moments later, the horror in Jill's face, who rolled a natty 1 and slit her own fucking throat.
Oh my god, I was like, she rolled a natty 20. Oh my god, she just threw her on the arse. She's gonna murder Jaden.
Just slit her own throat. And then all of a sudden, like, you could just see the blood pouring down, and she's like, and she starts to like try to climb herself to her feet, but then kind of like stumbles back down to a knee. She's still trying to like claw herself back up, and you can just see like she's like, no, this is not how and she kind of flops to the side and starts doing like little like convulses and whatnot. That brings us back to you, boyo.
Yeah, I think I'll take another shot with the crossbow.
Okay, so and you take aim and fire.
Twang.
Your crossbow bolt misses, and you can see that he had picked up whatever it was that was on the ground, and he immediately starts reading from it. And from the little sparks and show of light and everything that's happening, and the fact that it just immediately disappears in like a poof of dust, of glittering dust, you imagine that was just a scroll that he read. Roll me a spellcraft check.
Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear.
He just cast protection from arrows off of a scroll. That gives him DR 10 against all arrows. But magic overcomes it. We don't need to let this play out any more than it already has, because he thinks that he's safe. He just starts beelining it towards you. He has no fear. You're shooting crossbows at him. That's a light crossbow. That's great. You're not gonna hurt him with your bolts. He's protecting against any damage you could do with that bolt. Or is he? You have probably 3 or 4 more rounds before you have probably 3 more rounds before he gets to you. You load a bolt and you fire. The next one whizzes by his head. He doesn't care. He keeps coming. You load a bolt You already know what's going on. You understand the confines of the spell. You wait until he gets even closer. And he thinks you're an idiot, and you know he's the fool. You take that shot, and he doesn't care as he sees it coming straight for him, and all of a sudden it catches him right in the solar plex. And he takes like a couple more steps, and then he kind of like stumbles to the side and leans against a large boulder that's there, and he looks down at the arrow, and looks up at you genuinely shocked. Like, what the fuck happened? Like, genuinely, like, how did this happen? I don't know. And that's when he looks up to see you with a little smile on your face. Next bolt is already loaded, and you just pull that trigger. Next one catches him a little bit higher in the chest. He takes it and then slumps to a knee and then down to the ground and dies.
Good. Good.
Your character thinks that to himself, probably even says it out loud, and then turns to kind of like take in the situation. You can see that Jaden, you immediately look at her first. She was shaken. Jaden is still a bit shaken up. She's probably seeing stars, the way that she had bashed her head on the rock below. She's seeing stars, but she's kind of like rubbing the back of her head and kind of coming to, dazzled, we'll say. You look over to see, what's his name? Aldred. Obviously, you care about him. Do you immediately go to investigate his body?
Yeah.
So you rush over there and quickly just try to check his vitals just to see if he's okay. Roll me a heal check. Had you gotten here sooner, or had you had any form of magic, perhaps you would have been able to assist him. But even if you were to find the potion of healing on one of them, likelihood, you're not going to be able to apply it in time. He's a good friend of yours. But unfortunately, he was a good friend of yours. You spend a couple moments in mourning, thinking of how it is to handle the situation, kind of processing it. And finally, your eyes start to wander and look for Harveen. And you notice that Harveen's not there. Piques your curiosity for a second, and you kind of like start looking around, maybe get up.
The pack's gone as well.
Try to see. And the pack is in fact gone. The not her pack, the one that was near you, but the other one that was a bit further, the pack that belonged to Reza, snagged up and missing. You can roll me a perception check if you'd like. But you've been distracted, so he's had some time to run. You don't, unfortunately. You thought you saw something for a moment, but you're not sure which way he went. But Harveen took to leave. Jaden's sitting there dazed, and you're having a hard time rejoicing the fact that you're once again a free man without your favorite person to rejoice it with. And with that, Neal, we'll end your episode 0, your introduction to Rayrin in Aurorum Kingmaker.
Combat in Pathfinder is cruel.
Right, but look how unique and like how much like nuance and whatnot can exist.
Yeah,
in it.
it's fun. I like it's much more flexible.
Yeah, there are some areas that are. The problem is when you add too much, sometimes it can be a bit overbearing, but that's a conversation for a different time. I just am very glad that we were able to get this out of the way, introduce your character and whatnot. I'm excited to actually have you with the rest of the crew and to have you guys meeting one another and getting forward with the campaign. Before we sign off for this one, I will say, just as a reminder, anybody that wants to go over onto the Patreon and support that way, obviously you do not have to do it, but for those that do, I do have a bunch of different tiers over there of ways that you can aid the party, including putting magic items, potions, whatnot, inside the party's hands, increasing the coffers that belong to the kingdom, which can be cashed in for gold pieces in their actual coin purses as well as NPCs and whatnot that be created there. There's even a tier called Villains and Villages, for if you want to make an actual villain that is going to rival the party or a town. Like, hey, let's build a township together and have fun, and I'll hop on a call with you. We get to work on either the villain or the village together for a couple hour call and have fun with that. So either way, thank you so much for watching this. Don't go anywhere because we're about to show the next Pathfinder Kingmaker Episode 0 character opening. Anything you'd like to say before we go, Neal?
Nope, not at all. I mean, have you said when this will be aired live?
Oh, wait, what?
You said when this
normal,
will be aired
normal time. The same time that this pre-recording of Episode 0 is going to be aired.
You mean right now? An hour ago? It's beginning live?
Wednesday mornings, 9 a.m. EST, which because of who's on the show, I will also add that when time settles, will also be Wednesday afternoons. I believe that's 2 p.m.
It will
GMT.
eventually be 2 p.m. But
And-
right now, it's 1 because you've changed time and we haven't.
Exactly.
We'll get there eventually.
Exactly that. And for those in Eastern AU, because again, the times of people that are going, that'll also be, I think, like midnight for them the following day. Midnight for them going live over there. Because we do have some AU people playing. But anyways, thank you again so much for hanging out. Catch you guys later in literally a couple minutes.
Guys.